Hi, my name is Dean Blosser, and I've had the privilege of helping the DEA develop and deliver 28 high-hazard clan lab training classes, which require the use of fully encapsulated Level A suits. What is a high-hazard clan lab? It is an illegal drug lab which final products or precursors can be fatal if inhaled or absorbed through the skin. Fentanyl and carfentanil are the drugs that are getting the most attention, but LSD and PCP can also be extremely hazardous for first responders. Drug dealers have been making millions of dollars by adding micrograms of fentanyl to heroin to increase its potency. The results have been a sharp increase in overdoses and deaths. Most of the pure fentanyl is mailed in from China and Mexico, but fentanyl labs and milling operations are expected to increase over the next decade. So how can we keep our officers, agents, and first responders safe? In my 25 years of responding to chemical spills and cleaning up hazardous waste sites, the answer is always the same: safe work practices and the use of proper personal protective equipment. First, treat all suspected drug materials as if it can kill you, because quite simply, it can. Always minimize direct contact with the material and limit airflow, which could potentially aerosolize the material. Avoid field testing and send suspected fentanyl directly to the nearest forensic lab. The minimum protection for handling drug materials is chemical gloves, Tyvek suit taped at the seams, and an N95 dust mask. Every first responder should always have these items available for personal safety. Now let's talk about suspected drug houses that may be manufacturing high-hazard drugs by adding micrograms of fentanyl to sugar to make fake oxys or other opioids at $60 per pill. A kilogram is 1,000 grams. A microgram is 1/1,000,000th of a gram. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out there's a lot of money to be made, and thus the epidemic of dead people who just wanted some pain relief. There are many opinions for the type of personal protective equipment to be worn for tactical entry, sampling, and processing of a potential high-hazard drug lab. These are only my opinions and do not represent official Drug Enforcement Administration policy or that of Hazmat Solutions. OSHA's Level C is used quite extensively in the cleanup of Superfund sites. A combination acid gas organic vapor cartridge with a P100 filter for particulates is the most often used. The problem that I see is that even if the full-face respirator is properly inspected, sized, and all the gaskets are working correctly, OSHA says it is 99.97% effective. So, if I have 1 single gram of carfentanil in the air, then 300 micrograms of extremely fine particles can theoretically pass through the canister to render a potentially lethal dose. So again, in my opinion, always use an SCBA for tactical entry into a potentially high-hazard drug lab. Obviously, practice at the range is required to become proficient with any type of a face piece. Once the area has been secured, the DEA should be notified to determine if a Level A trained team is required for sampling and processing. A cleanup contractor may also be required, and you probably don't want to pick up the tab, so contact the DEA for one of their approved cleanup contractors. If a Level A team is required, I'm still not a fan of APRs for evidence collection. Small samples of liquids should be properly packaged and sent to the lab for processing, while the finished product of any powder should be double bagged, placed in an evidence bag, and then a DOT-approved container. If the evidence is more than 1 kilogram, a DOT-approved container should be placed in a Pelican case in the trunk of the vehicle and then transported directly to the nearest lab for testing. Always contact the state or DEA labs for instructions prior to using the U.S. Postal Service. The question now becomes, I've made entry, and have I become contaminated? In the hazmat world, we'd like to rinse hazardous materials off our suits prior to their removal. That is still the case for Level A suits, but not for chemical coveralls. I always use what's called a dry decon method of systematically removing protective clothing. The officer should stand in a large trash bag and remove the outer gloves. An assistant can remove the SCBA and place it on a level surface. The tape can be removed and the suit carefully rolled away from the responder. Decon personnel should touch only the outside of the suit, while the officer can assist by touching only the inside of the suit. The person steps out of the boots and the bag is sealed and set aside for proper disposal. An alternate procedure, which has gained favor with the DoD, is to cut the suit off rather than try and remove the tape. I always strongly recommend taking a shower and changing your clothes just to be on the safe side. Whenever you are dealing with fentanyl, several doses of Narcan should always be available with EMS standing by for any accidental exposures. I hope you found this information useful. If you would like in-house training for your department, please complete a quote request from our website. And as always, thank you for your service, and please stay safe out there.